Courage the Cowardly Dog was a cartoon that used to terrify me when I was younger. It's crazy how many boundaries this show managed to push when you really think about it. Today, I thought I'd talk about some of the craziest moments from the show that I personally remember. As always, my social media and all of the music are linked below, so check that out. And thank you as always for all of your support, especially on the last video. Let's get into it. I feel like Courage was one of those shows that stressed almost everybody out as a kid. Even though I say that, actually my earliest memories of Courage don't contain any fear at all. For some reason when I was little, the show just didn't scare me, which is pretty odd. Not because of how creepy Courage was, but because I was extremely scared of Goosebumps as a kid, which deserves its own video, frankly. Anyway, time passed and I kind of forgot about the show until I started getting into creepypasta 10 or so years ago. Because of creepypasta, I started watching all the creepy YouTube videos and top 10s I could, and that led me to a video from a channel called Watcher of the 2000s called Top 10 Most Disturbing, Scariest, Courage the Cowardly Dog episodes. This video basically just flipped a switch in me. I'm not sure if it was because I was just easily influenced at the time or if I was just more aware of how creepy certain aspects of the show were, but for a while after that, Courage truly became one of the scariest shows I'd ever seen. I can genuinely remember getting stressed out whenever I'd see anything Courage related on YouTube or anywhere. However, that being said, there were some more popular moments that just really didn't hit for me in terms of scaring me at least. One example is the whole "return the slab" part from King Ramses' curse. I don't know why, but he just never creeped me out. I do really enjoy the episode though, and it gets pretty wild. I mean, in the first minute, 2 guys get eaten by locusts, so you already know this episode is going to be crazy. The long story short is, Eustace, the biggest hater of all time, finds the slab, finds out it's worth $1 million, and when confronted by King Ramses, decides to keep the slab because he's a bum, and is more worried about having $1 million than living. What are you going to use the money for if you're dead, Eustace? Did you ever think about that? But I digress. They face flooding, and despite almost drowning, Eustace still just won't fold. Next is just an annoying song. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't even that bad for real. The last one is actually the scariest to me though, that being the one with the locusts. I say this mainly because of the fact that they can just eat whatever they want. They eat a whole truck with no problem. What exactly are they gonna do to me? It's crazy too because Eustace only folds and lets go of the slab after he loses the entire house. Even then, after the curse ends, he just goes and grabs the slab again, even though King Ramses is standing right beside him. I will never understand why Eustace is that stupid, man. This leads to the ending, which I think in concept is way scarier than King Ramses himself. It shows Eustace trapped inside of the slab itself, perpetually screaming, and of course Eustace is still talking about money for the slab like he's not a part of it. It's creepy to me when I think about it because imagine being trapped as a carving in a slab in some museum for decades, and since it's a magical slab, who knows? It may last for an eternity. Are you fully conscious of your state, unable to move or do anything? I don't know, it just seems very horrifying. But alright. If that's how I felt about an episode with a popular moment that I wasn't even scared of, what's one that I was scared of when I was younger? The first episode that comes to mind is another popular episode called The Great Fusilli. Now, to be real, I think that prior YouTube video mentioning this episode probably caused me to be even more afraid of this episode, because if I remember correctly, it was the first episode of Courage I saw after seeing that video. Funnily enough, I actually got one of those Cartoon Network 4 Kid Favorites DVDs at the store, specifically the Hall of Fame Collection Volume 2. I kind of avoided the Courage part at first, but I ended up watching it, and one of the episodes contained was the Great Fusilli. So let me get into what about this episode is so creepy. The creepiest thing about this episode is Fusilli's stage. When Eustace and Muriel get on the stage for the first time, they immediately get basically addicted to performing, donning heavy makeup and costumes for their very next performance. Even Courage chooses to put on a costume and perform with them. Even though Courage manages to get out of it thanks to stumbling into a room full of Fusilli's performers, aka people he just turned into puppets, it's just really unnerving to think that once somebody gets on that stage, they don't have any control over themselves anymore. Even Fusilli falls victim to this, but I'll get back to that in a moment. As I was watching Eustace and Muriel get turned into puppets again for this video, I thought about something I hadn't in the past when I viewed it. How exactly does any of this work? Now you might think, That's a very silly question. This is a kid's show. It doesn't matter. But think about it. When you don't understand what's happening, that can actually make things a lot scarier. A good example, in my opinion, is Uzumaki by Junji Ito. In this manga, there are these mysterious spirals that take over a rural village in Japan. People become obsessed with these spirals, with them taking over every aspect of their lives. We first see this in the beginning of the story, when Shuichi's father becomes so obsessed over spirals that he begins to turn himself into one and eventually succeeds, which leads to this unnerving image. Point is, one reason that sequence in itself and the manga as a whole are so creepy are because of the fact that we don't understand what caused this or why people are obsessed with it. By the way, I will be talking about the Uzumaki anime on my anime channel if and when it comes out this year, so go subscribe. I drop videos there every single week and I already have a few up, so shameless plug. Anyway, the unexplainable becomes even more creepy after Fusilli himself ends up falling onto the stage and gets hit by the spotlight. Immediately he begins performing and we hear a ghostly audience applause even though we know that there's nobody there and there are no speakers or any sound equipment in view. Suddenly, the masks release magical puppet strings that turn Fusilli himself into his own puppet. This part is just the creepiest to me because we don't know what happened to him after this. Did he just perform right there forever? Afterward, we see Eustace and Muriel being puppeted by Courage before the episode and actually the season end. But yeah, you can see why I thought this episode was pretty creepy. I think there's one more episode that I just have to talk about in a video like this though. That of course is Perfect, which I believe is actually the series finale. Could be wrong though. Now, for those of you that know popular creepy Courage moments, you know that infamous moment where Courage dreams of this creepy computer generated guy telling him that he's not perfect. Even when watching that part again for this video, it honestly still creeped me out, surprisingly enough. Either way though, that's not the only unnerving moment of this episode. The story goes something like this. Courage becomes so obsessed with being perfect that this creepy teacher shows up to try to teach him to be perfect. No clue where she came from or what she is, but she tries and fails to teach Courage how to be perfect at anything. It gets to the point where she tells Courage to just sleep perfectly, which leads to that now infamous moment. That's not his only nightmare in this sequence though. One that I still find pretty creepy as well is one where Muriel hands him a vase that he accidentally drops. However, instead of the vase shattering, it's Muriel that shatters and then Courage. I really enjoyed the whole dream sequence of this episode too because they experiment with so many different styles in it. Courage eventually goes back to the class and is told that if he doesn't pass this final exam, everyone will know that he's not perfect, but Courage has to go to the bathroom before he can take the exam. This is when we actually get this genuinely beautiful moment, which Courage actually has a lot of.
There's no such thing as perfect. You're beautiful as you are, Courage. With all your imperfections, you can do anything.
I'm not gonna lie, that almost made me tear up, man. But back to the creepiness. After Courage makes a perfect 6 in a creative way, the teacher just melts. Which, on its own, sure, that's creepy, but it made me ask myself a question. Where did she come from? We know that she has to be real because D Long was shown to have been taught by her, but did Courage just, summon her because he felt so imperfect? I don't know, but either way, the ending of this episode is pretty beautiful, with everyone just being happy with their imperfections and living life how they want to anyway. So yeah, I think that's a great note to leave off on. Until next time.